Giving negative and positive feedback is a critical part of everyone's job, whether you're an individual contributor, a middle manager, or the boss. Most of us don't like giving feedback, especially negative feedback. Research also shows that as much as we may dislike giving negative feedback, employees want to get it, as long as it is delivered appropriately. Delivering feedback appropriately is the crucial element that makes the difference between whether an employee experiences feedback as helpful or harmful. And while you might think that delivering feedback inappropriately sounds like yelling or threatening, it doesn't have to be loud or overbearing to miss the mark. Here are 3 times to reconsider your performance feedback before you run the risk of being heard as hypocritical, inconsistent, overwhelming, or worse. 1, when you're accidentally being a hypocrite. Are you planning to let your sales manager know you'd like her to speak less and listen more in meetings? Then you'd better be modeling a lot of listening in meetings. Do you want your customer service agent to know that his inconsistent follow-up needs to improve? Then your follow-up should be stellar. If you're giving feedback about a behavior or a task, you want to make sure that you're either doing it well enough to be a role model or be open enough to admit that this is a developmental goal for you as well. You'll have much greater credibility if you come clean about the fact that you don't have a particular competency mastered, and you can take the opportunity to share what you're doing to improve it. 2, when you've given a lot of other feedback recently. Behavior change is hard. Behavior change takes time. Behavior change happens in 5 stages: pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, and maintenance. If you've given somebody a lot of negative feedback recently, it means that you've made multiple requests for them to launch this 5-stage process for each and every change. This is the problem with traditional annual performance reviews when they serve as the only time that a manager gives feedback. It's a practical and emotional overload with few lasting results. You may have more feedback to give, but that doesn't mean your employee has more capacity to take it. 3, when feedback is used to lay blame or for any other reason than to improve performance. Negative performance feedback should not be used to make sure you can pin a project gone wrong on someone, to retaliate, to unload emotions that you're having trouble managing, to show that you're a tough boss, to instill fear, to manipulate someone, to force somebody's hand, or for any other reason that isn't performance related. Management author Ken Blanchard wrote that feedback is the breakfast of champions, and champion feedback providers know when to give it and when to skip it. According to Daniel Pink, author of Drive, The Surprising Truth About What Motivates Us, when we make progress and get better at something, it is inherently motivating. In order for people to make progress, they have to get feedback and information on how they're doing. When we get information about what we're doing well, whether it's achieving or even exceeding our goals, or demonstrating helpful behaviors that have a favorable impact on other people and on the business, we are more likely to feel appreciated, valued, and encouraged to keep doing what's working. So what do if you know you need positive feedback and you're not getting any? Here are 3 strategies to try. 1, dig deeper. Let's say you get the occasional "nice job" or "keep up the good work" from your manager. Rather than leave it at a pat on the back, press your manager for details. You might say something like, "Thanks for the vote of confidence. I appreciate it. And so that I can do it well next time, or maybe even better, would you share with me 1 or 2 specific behaviors you observed in me that contributed to our project's success?" 2, give more positive feedback. Ask your boss if you can share a positive piece of feedback with her. It's highly unlikely that she'll say no to that. Give her a single piece of specific behavioral feedback you've noticed and express the positive impact it's had on you. For example, in our last client meeting, when you stopped the discussion to say to me, "We we haven't heard your perspective yet. You gave me the invitation into the conversation that I really needed. I really appreciated that you did that because it made me feel respected and like my opinion mattered. Thank you. Try that a few times, all of them genuine, of course, and you might notice that her reciprocity bias kicks in. That's our impulse to reciprocate actions that others have done to us. 3, don't call it feedback. If you think that asking for more positive feedback is going to feel like fishing, ask for something else that's feedback adjacent. Like what? Like saying, I would really like to be helpful to our team. Is there something you'd like me to help somebody on our team get better at? You may need to do a little extra work to get the positive feedback you need to stay motivated, but in the end, it'll be worth it. Imagine that you and I have worked together for a while, and one day you decide to bring me a present. You come into my office and say, Deborah, I was thinking of you and appreciate how much help and support you've given me. Here's a little gift for you. And imagine that before you could hand that gift over, my face registered concern and resistance, and my hands rose up in a defensive gesture. No, thank you, I tell you. I don't want it. I don't deserve it. Give it to somebody else. What would you think to yourself? You might think, what just happened? Or, how unprofessional? Or, I feel embarrassed and rejected. I'm done giving gifts around here. That's what happens when somebody offers you positive feedback and you minimize it, deflect it, or re-gift it. Being able to accept negative feedback requires you to have mindsets of growth and curiosity to prevent defensiveness and distortion. Well, guess what? Accepting positive feedback requires the same mindsets to keep you from minimizing it, avoiding it, or giving it away to someone else. Here are 7 strategies to help you accept positive feedback. 1, treat it like a gift. It is a gift. And demonstrate appreciation. 2, recognize the value of strengthening your existing strengths. 3, see it and value it from the other person's perspective. 4, figure out how to leverage it to help other people. 5, give credit without undermining your own contribution. 6, don't offer automatic reciprocity just to be nice. 7, get curious about anything that could make it even better for next time. Positive feedback is a gift. Take the time to really savor it. In the romantic comedy Broadcast News, Holly Hunter plays Jane Craig, a television producer with an unshakable commitment to being right. In a heated exchange during layoffs, network executive Paul Moore remarks to her, "It must be nice to always believe you know better, to always think you're the smartest person in the room." Jane replies with utmost sincerity, "No, it's awful." I must admit, I can't relate to Jane. I love thinking that I know best, and I resent it when somebody proves to me that I don't. I'm working on it, I promise. And whether or not you're like me, chances are you've worked with or for somebody who also loves to be right. The very idea of confronting them with a perspective or data that shows that they may be wrong can be enough to make you want to call in sick. Nevertheless, for those of us who care about our personal and professional integrity, the quality of our work, and the impact of our organizations, standing up for what we believe in is a critical part of work and life. Austrian philosopher Ivan Illich once remarked, "Leadership does not depend on being right." That may be true, but for many of us, keeping a good relationship with the boss may depend on us acting as if he or she is right, even when we think otherwise. So, whether you have an inkling or a pounding sensation that the boss is wrong, here are 6 strategies to help you win your boss's respect without losing your job. 1, pick your timing wisely. If you're going to have any kind of difficult conversation, let the other person choose the time that works best for him or her. Approach your manager by letting them know that you have something to discuss for 15 minutes and ask what the best time would be for his or her undistracted attention. Once you're in the meeting, if you notice that your boss is distracted or being interrupted, ask to reschedule. Nobody wants to be called out with the risk of somebody overhearing, and nobody wants to do the calling out if they have to start and restart a tricky conversation after every distraction. 2, name the fact that you are sharing your perspective only and be open to your boss's perspective too. In other words, approaching anyone with black-white, right-wrong choices sets them up for win-lose. Begin the conversation by saying, I want to share my perspective on what's been happening, what I observed, what I think, and then I'd like to hear yours too. Your perspective, of course, is that your boss is wrong, but keep in mind that you may have something to learn and maybe even reconsider when you hear another way of looking at this right-wrong issue. 3, use the word wrong cautiously and very specifically. If you're going to use the word wrong when speaking to your boss about his or her actions, behaviors, or conclusions, identify exactly what you are naming as incorrect or inappropriate. You want to make your focus the specific element that you think is wrong rather than making your boss wrong as a person. It also helps to first name what you think is right. So for example, you might say, I appreciate how much time you took to gather our insights for your report, and upon reading it, I think that one of your conclusions may be wrong. Notice, may be wrong. Once you toss the word wrong out there, you can't really take it back without feeling embarrassed, regretful, and, well, wrong. 4, name the agreed upon standard, if there is one, how your boss's behavior, approach, or outcome differs from that standard, and then get curious rather than judgmental. This makes it less personal. For example, when we last spoke, we agreed that you wouldn't share our marketing plan until we had firm numbers, which we don't have yet. I noticed that you already shared the marketing plan. Can you tell me about that decision? Try to avoid why questions, which can put people on the defensive. 5, know when to escalate. When what you think about your boss is wrong, has potential legal, fiscal, moral, or safety implications, it's time to take your concerns up the food chain. You may want to check in with HR, who will likely keep your inquiry confidential, before you go to your boss's boss to see if there's merit to your issue. Better to wonder in private whether it turns out that you were right or wrong. 6, be willing to admit when you were wrong about thinking you were right. As J.K. Rowling wrote, the best of us must sometimes eat our words. Do any of these sound like something you're struggling with? I need to give Tom feedback on his communication skills, but every time I try, he gets defensive. Whenever I schedule a performance review with Ellen, she calls in sick. Jamie nods her head when I tell her how to think more strategically. She yeses me to death and promises she'll do better, but then nothing changes. Then you are dealing with somebody who doesn't take feedback well. When you notice the signs, stop giving performance-related feedback and start giving feedback specifically on how your colleague, direct report, manager, or client receives feedback. Here are 5 steps to approach the discussion. 1, get curious. You can't assume that the feedback receiver sees her behavior in the same way that you do. So instead of leading with lines as I'm sure you know, whenever I give you a performance review, you give me one-word responses. Acknowledge that you're expressing an opinion and you want to hear hers too. In our performance reviews, what are you typically thinking? 2, use neutral language. Want to make someone defensive? Tell him he's being defensive. Try to avoid words that carry negative connotations and place blame. For example, don't say, when I give you feedback, I notice you won't make eye contact, because won't assumes an intention. Instead say, When I give you feedback, I notice that you look at the floor. I'm curious to know what's going on for you. By withholding your judgment and interpretation, you appear more open. 3, ask for feedback yourself. You may not be giving your employee what she needs in order to hear, absorb, and accept feedback. Perhaps your communication style is too direct, or you offer your comments late in the day when she's trying to get home, or you send mixed messages by too frequently pairing negative feedback with positive. Be brave enough to ask, how am I contributing to this problem? And then model how to receive the feedback. 4, share a personal story. Normalize the often painful experience of receiving feedback by sharing a personal story about a time when you got feedback and didn't take it well or at all. Share the impact of that experience, what you learned from it, and how you've changed as a result. 5, secure a commitment. Make a specific request for a behavior change, be open to counteroffers, and then come to agreement on the goal. You may say something like, so moving forward, here's what I'd like to see happen. I'll give you some feedback, and if you feel like you disagree or have a different perspective on it, or that I'm not getting the whole picture, you'll tell me that in the meeting. I'll agree to really listen to your take on the situation, and we'll come up with a plan together. Does that work for you? Your job in giving feedback isn't done when you give it. It's done when it's received, internalized, and applied. Offering feedback about how to receive feedback is an important step in making that happen. Working and what needs to change. As Bill Gates noted, we all need people who will give us feedback. That's how we improve. So what do you do if you know that negative feedback is what you need to succeed and nobody's talking? Stop asking for negative feedback. You've already tried that, right? And try one of these creative approaches instead. Give yourself negative feedback first. According to Wharton professor and author Adam Grant, when people shy away from giving constructive feedback, it's often because they're afraid of hurting your feelings. But if they hear you talk about what you did wrong, the fear melts away. Start by saying something like, I know that I tend to work quickly and sometimes overlook important details. I'd like to get better at that. Do you have any thoughts on how I could improve? And then, once you have them talking, you can ask, and is there anything else I could be working on to improve right now? Make self-improvement a personal commitment and ask for help. If directly soliciting negative feedback isn't working, tell your manager that you've made a commitment to yourself to improve in 3 areas this year, and that you'd like her feedback on what 1 or more of those areas should be. Ask, would you please help me keep the commitment I've made to myself? That way, she can view her feedback as more about helping you make good on a promise and less about hurting your feelings. Reframe negative feedback as a learning opportunity. If your manager, colleague, or client is reticent to offer negative feedback directly, ask, what is something you think I could learn from you? It gives the other person a chance to reflect on their own talents and skills, which makes most people feel good, and share their thinking about where they could help you grow in a non-threatening context. And if you're really lucky, they might even ask you, and what is something you think I could learn from you? And then you get to give some gentle negative feedback too. Managers should be able to give negative feedback, but even if they don't, you need to learn how to solicit it so that you get the information you need to grow in your job and career. Your elevator pitch is a short summary of your service, product, or company and how it adds value to customers. It's a useful tool for communicating core information quickly that will hopefully yield you an invitation to have a longer conversation with potential clients down the road. The problem with most elevator pitches is that they get crafted on paper, but not adjusted to sound like how a real person speaks. The majority come across as synthetic as an infomercial. We help startups maximize their social media strategies to grow their customer base. But wait, there's more. It's a one-way delivery system designed to make a powerful positive first impression, but listeners tend to feel pitched at rather than engaged with. And as much as I am a hearty consumer of goods and services for my personal and professional life, I don't like to feel sold. When you are so focused on making sure you sell the benefits because anybody could be a customer, you neglect a primary reason why people want to do business, because they connect with you. Not with your pitch, but with you. Here are 3 tips to drop the phony facade and elevate the delivery of your pitch so that you sound like a real person. 1, speak simply. I help individuals, couples, and families make sound financial plans so that they don't outlive their money, may read very well on a website, but doesn't sound the way people really talk. When speaking, you might start with, I'm a financial planner, and I make sure my clients don't outlive their money. Much more compelling, genuine, and even fun. 2, turn your pitch into a question. If you're a professional organizer, ask, you know that pile of papers you've got somewhere in your house that you've been meaning to get through? As a professional organizer, I help people finally get through it. 3, be willing to forego your pitch entirely. If you're already making a warm connection with somebody and they ask what you do, don't risk bringing a cold pitch into the conversation. Just say what you do, and more importantly, find out what the other person does and show genuine curiosity about them. If Rudyard Kipling was correct that words are, of course, the most powerful drug used by mankind, then many of us are addicted. Most of us, regardless of gender, do more telling, advising, convincing, explaining, directing, and divulging than we should. And all of that talking is costing us time, productivity, and energy. It's also costing us our credibility and our relationships. People who go on and on appear to undervalue others' contributions, lack curiosity and self-awareness, and seem self-absorbed and even nervous. Here are 10 reasons many of us talk too much. Which ones sound like you? 1, talking about yourself. Research shows that when we talk about ourselves, our brains release dopamine, the pleasure hormone, so we're immediately rewarded when we do so. 2, talking to show how much you know. This, ironically, tends to undermine rather than build credibility. It also has a negative impact on our likability, one of the key factors in how we evaluate people. 3, talking out of nervousness or insecurity. Our ability to self-manage shrinks when our anxiety grows. Talking to change someone's mind. And we do this despite the evidence that facts alone rarely persuade. 5, talking because you had prepared something to say, even if it's no longer necessary or relevant. 6, talking to stop somebody else from talking. Remind you of any staff meetings or family holidays? 7, talking out of habit. For many of us, speaking can feel like an automatic reflex rather than a thoughtful approach to sharing information. 8, talking to think. While some of us organize our ideas before sharing them, many of us use talking as a way to clarify and sound out our ideas, working out our mental processes aloud. Talking because it's your turn. Whether it's at a meeting or in a conversation, we think of our turn as a directive or mandate to say something rather than an opportunity we can take or pass on or defer until we actually have something more meaningful to contribute. 10, talking to fill the silence. Yes, research from Duke Medical School found that silence is associated with the development of new cells in the hippocampus, the key brain region associated with learning and memory. Still, most people experience silence as something to avoid, especially in conversation. Whether you see yourself in one of these or all 10, try listening more than speaking, and speaking concisely when you do, and inviting others to share their perspectives. As Thomas Jefferson once mused, The most valuable of all talents is that of never using two words when one will do. From ride-sharing to co-working spaces, and from Netflix to 3D printers, all of these were, at some point, brand new ideas. And each of them had a person or people behind the idea who saw the business potential in turning their idea into reality. American advertising executive Lois Wise once remarked, "The only people in the world who can change things are those who can sell ideas." And most of us realize that it's not enough just to generate novel approaches. We need to ideate, evaluate, and then get buy-in to move from idea to action. More often than not, the person whose buy-in we need is our boss. And that's not always easy. Our bosses are often busy with, if not overwhelmed by, implementing their own priorities, as well as the priorities of their higher-ups. Getting them to think about original approaches may take a back seat to handling day-to-day responsibilities. So let's say you have an amazing idea that you truly believe will positively impact the business and boost your own profile as well. Congratulations! But before you bombard your boss with a new pitch, do your homework and ask yourself these 3 questions first. 1, how does my idea relate to what keeps my boss up at night? If you want to get your boss's attention and gain her buy-in, you need to make a direct link between how your idea will address what your boss is worried about. If your manager is constantly challenged to retain the business of a few big but on-the-fence clients, be prepared to address how your approach will solve for that. If it doesn't connect to something that your boss cares deeply about and is charged with solving, you don't need to pitch it now. 2, what might be the unintended impacts of my idea? Chances are you've thought about the positive, visible impacts of your idea, whether it's increasing customer satisfaction, reducing production time, or generating new revenue. But have you thought about secondary impacts, which may not be desirable for everyone? Let's say that you have a new approach to automating the collections of overdue invoices. This may be good news for the bottom line of the business, but how will this impact your colleagues working in the accounts receivable department who might find themselves out of a job? Make sure you think about the unintended impacts up, down, and across the organization, as well as for key stakeholders outside the business who may not experience your great idea as all that terrific. 3, how many ideas have I tried to sell my boss recently, and what can I learn from my track record? If you're about to pitch your boss your 5th idea this week, consider holding off. If you're about to pitch your boss an idea when she's in the middle of year-end performance reviews, consider waiting. If you're about to pitch your boss with a 30-slide PowerPoint proposal when you know she prefers a short email, consider revising your mode of communication. Take stock of the pitches you've made in the past and analyze what worked and what didn't, and any feedback you may have received. Adapt your approach accordingly. A great idea without a great plan to sell it isn't great. In the words of business guru Mary Kay Ash, a mediocre idea that generates enthusiasm will go further than a great idea that inspires no one. People managers wear many hats: delegator, goal setter, accountability partner, brainstorming buddy, performance evaluator, obstacle mover, resource allocator, and more. This, of course, is all in addition to her day job of actual work. And there's one critical role for managers that often doesn't get addressed: career developer. According to research by Right Management, the global career and talent development expert within Manpower Group, only 16% of employees indicate that they have ongoing conversations with their managers about their careers. 82% of employees would be more engaged if their manager incorporated ongoing career conversations into their day-to-day reporting processes. Nevertheless, with all the other work that a supervisor has to do, it's not surprising that career development conversations can fall off the radar. But it's not only because there's too much to do and not enough time. Many managers are unskilled or uncomfortable having these conversations. For some managers, they may not know how to bring up career development without it sounding like they're hinting that it's time for their employee to move on. For others, they may not know what options for career advancement exist within the company and therefore may not want to offer what they cannot deliver. Still, others may resist discussing it with employees who have made themselves indispensable in their roles. Think about it. Why would somebody want to bring up how you could move on to another role if they can't possibly spare you? Regardless of whether it's challenging or confusing, it is your manager's job to have these discussions. But that doesn't mean that it's not also your job. Ultimately, you are accountable for how your career advances. So if your boss isn't bringing it up, you should. And if your boss is only bringing it up once a year during year-end performance evaluations, you'll need to increase that frequency. That is, unless you're truly ready to stay in the role you're in for the long haul. Let's assume you've taken the initial 2 steps of first, telling your boss that you'd like to discuss your career goals, and second, asking to schedule the discussion at a time that works for both of you. What do you say next? Here are 3 ways to address your career development with a boss who may be putting it off, fumbling for words, or maybe avoiding it completely. 1. Focus on your desire to be challenged. I'm anticipating that I'll be ready for a new challenge in the next 3 to 6 months. I'd like to talk to you about what opportunities there are for me here to do that. 2, talk about fit. I'd like to share with you the parts of my job that I enjoy and that I feel are a really good fit for my skills and interests. And I'd like to tell you about the parts of my job that feel like a mismatch. I think there might be other roles I could be better suited for. 3, make it about mastery. As part of my overall career plan, I'd like to master a new set of skills and learn about a different area of the business. Can we talk about how I could do that here? And then what? Have a dialogue. Listen for clues and cues that your boss is open to partnering with you for your current and future career success. The bottom line is that leaders take notice of employees who show initiative in their own career development. And if they don't notice or don't support you, it may be time to start looking for somebody who does. We all make mistakes, from minor ones like mispronouncing someone's name, which, depending on the person, could actually be a really big deal, to major ones like making an expensive, misguided hire. Every single one of us can remember the workplace errors we've made that are cringeworthy for ourselves and painful for others. For those of us with a conscience and some degree of emotional intelligence, saying, "I'm sorry," after the fact may not be easy, but it usually isn't agonizing. It can also be deeply meaningful. Aaron Lazar, the former Dean Chancellor and Dean of the University of Massachusetts Medical School and the author of the book On Apology, described apologizing as one of the most profound interactions 2 people can have with one another. And yet, saying "I'm sorry" too often can begin to feel insincere and ineffective. Hubbard contends, if you apologize too frequently to someone, it becomes background noise. Background noise gets tuned out, and getting tuned out at work, especially when you're trying to right a wrong, isn't a smart career strategy. So, assuming that you have made a mistake or that you will, and you don't want saying "I'm sorry" to become a habit or to undermine your impact or to get tuned out, here are 10 additional ways to acknowledge your error without denying culpability. I made a mistake. Would you like me to share what I think happened or just take steps to fix it? What I intended was, and now I see that the impact was, I wish I had. Instead, next time I will. I see that I did, and that you're feeling, how can I clean this up with you? Thank you for pointing that out or showing this to me or bringing this to my attention. Here's what I think I need to do to correct it. I did, and I don't want to make this mistake again. For the future, what should I know or do differently? I feel badly about what I did, and I appreciate the opportunity to correct it. I won't do this again, and here's what I'll do to make sure that I don't repeat this. I didn't think about or consider or foresee or plan this correctly. Here's what I missed, and here's what I've learned for the future. I see what happened, and I fully own my contribution to what went wrong. Saying I'm sorry works until it becomes expected or overused. Conveying that you're sorry in other ways and then backing up your apology with immediate and appropriate action can go a long way to repairing relationships, getting a process back on track, and to growing your professional credibility. The art of leadership is saying no, not saying yes, remarked former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair. It is very easy to say yes. You don't have to be a leader to wrestle with saying no. Regardless of role, responsibility, title, or position, many of us find ourselves wanting to decline a request for our time, but we don't know how to say no assertively. A passive approach to saying no might sound like, okay, I'll do it this time, when we don't want to do it this time or at all. Or it could sound like, maybe I can, when you already know that you can't or don't want to say yes. An aggressive reaction to a request for our time might range from, are you dumb? I said no. Or, not in a million years. Or, what makes you think I would want to do that? A passive-aggressive response can sound like, fine, when you're anything but fine. It can also sound like, do I really have a choice? It also shows up as, yeah, I'll get back to you, and you don't get back to them. Or, yeah, sure, I'll be there, and then you forget to show up. As much as we don't want to disappoint, hurt, or even anger our customers, clients, managers, direct reports, or colleagues, we can be assertive and firm in our no's while being flexible enough to keep the door open for future yeses. This requires us to be clear and honest about our own needs and preferences, to do something else with our time and energy, while honoring the needs and preferences of others, to be heard, to feel appreciated, to stay connected, to maintain their dignity in the face of rejection, etc. And if it's the boss who is asking, you just may need to say yes. Here are 8 ways to say no assertively to a request for your time. 1. Oh, I will be so disappointed to miss this, but thank you for thinking of me. 2, I'm so flattered that you asked, but unfortunately, I cannot do that. Can I help you brainstorm somebody who might be able to help? 3, right now, I need to say no to all invitations on this topic at this time, and here's why. 4, I need to decline, but I do hope you'll keep me in mind for the future. Would you please reach out to me again? 5, that sounds like a fantastic event, opportunity, cause, and I know that I'll be sorry to miss it. 6, not this time, but thank you for thinking of me. 7, not this time, but when's the next opportunity available for something like this? 8, I'm not available, but I know somebody who would love to be a part of this. Can I connect you? Saying no assertively takes practice, and it's worth it. The late, great fashion designer Karl Lagerfeld once remarked, I don't do meetings. And I guess if you're Karl Lagerfeld, you don't have to. But for the rest of us, meetings are a part of getting work done, even if they often feel like an interruption of our real work. No matter what you think of having meetings in general, having regular, focused, and productive one-on-one conversations between a manager and direct reports is vitally important. But if the meetings are only focused on asking these 3 questions, what are you working on? How's it going? Do you need anything from me? Then you're missing an opportunity. Or 20 opportunities. Like what? Like these ways that you can add depth, breadth, and value to your one-on-one meetings. 1, provide context for the work being delegated. 2, connect the work being done to personal and company values. 3, offer guidance on how to get the work done. 4, prioritize or reprioritize task assignments. 5, share the impact that the direct report is having on you and on others. 6, provide updates in both directions. 7, share your vision of the future. 8, motivate and inspire. 9, teach some critical skills. 10, coach on development areas. 11, offer empathy. 12, have career pathing conversations. 13, generate buy-in for a change or a new initiative. 14, really listen. 15, model behaviors. 16, brainstorm and problem solve. 17, clean up any loose ends. 18, share personal life updates. 19, build rapport. 20, give and ask for feedback. Which of these are you going to start asking for from your manager or offering to your direct reports if you're the boss? What does this guy know about what we're dealing with every day? She has no clue what she's talking about. He's trying to sell us something, and I'm not buying it. If you've ever sat in the audience and listened to a speaker whom you didn't trust, chances are you felt defensive, dismissive, or even insulted. You probably rolled your eyes and crossed your arms and bounced your leg and sent a range of body language signals that you weren't having it. You likely tuned him out and even walked out of the meeting early. And if you really felt like your trust was violated, you might have even told other people. Lots and lots of other people. Now imagine that speaker were you. I know, impossible to imagine, but stick with me here for just a moment. Imagine that you're at your company's town hall, sitting on a panel, at a critical client meeting, speaking at a conference, or even appearing at your kid's career day at school. What if you looked out at the sea of people, adults or even children, and saw them shaking their heads, crossing their arms, and figuring out the nearest means of escape? You realized, too late, that they just didn't trust you. Okay, you can stop imagining now. A lack of trust creates feelings of stress, which inhibits oxytocin and makes it challenging for people to interact well. Without oxytocin, there's no bonding. And when there's no bonding, you've left your listeners behind. Untrustworthy communicators say trust me or believe me repeatedly. They talk about themselves too much. They use humor at the expense of others. They rely primarily on their own or other people's opinions as evidence. They use questionable sources of data or research. They exaggerate and use hyperbole, including words like always, never, and everyone. They overreach the boundaries of their subject matter expertise. They withhold information to gain or maintain power. They blame others. They overpromise and underdeliver. They break promises. They keep bringing up the past as an excuse or explanation. They get angry in the face of challenging questions or differing opinions. They fail to say, I don't know, when they don't know. They stick to their conclusions, even in the face of new and relevant information. So what should you do instead? Communicate like a trustworthy communicator. Trustworthy communicators share their credentials without oversharing or boasting or minimizing them. They address the audience's WIFM, what's in it for me, early and often. They tell the truth, even if it's unpopular. They validate the audience members' feelings rather than telling them how they should feel. They admit it when the audience's interests and their own interests might be in conflict. They consider the level of technical, language, cultural, and subject matter understanding of an audience and adapt accordingly. They match their tone to the message and to the occasion. They make sure that their vocals, tone of voice, their verbals, their word choice, and their visuals, body language, all match. They use facts, statistics, logic, evidence, and examples to prove their points. They share how their own behaviors align with the message they're delivering. They check in with the audience to see what they understand or how they're experiencing the message. They tell true stories that get to the point quickly and clearly. They admit mistakes and apologize quickly. They stick to the amount of time they were supposed to speak, even if other speakers have gone long. They practice their presentation out of respect for the audience's time and attention. Albert Einstein said, "Whoever is careless with the truth in small matters cannot be trusted with important matters." Your next presentation or communication might be a small matter, but it's a big opportunity to show that you can be trusted with important ones. In the Oscar-winning film Annie Hall, Woody Allen's character Alvy Singer lamented, "I feel that life is divided into the horrible and the miserable. That's the two categories." Hopefully most of us realize that life can be divided into many other categories, including joyful and passionate and surprising and wondrous, along with, of course, at times, the horrible and the miserable. What many of us also realize is that we have the ability to anticipate the best possible outcome or the worst possible outcome. Do any of these sound like you? You can instantly transform any ache or pain into a potentially life-ending illness. You can easily shift any scary news story into an imminent threat to you and your loved ones. You can magically mutate anybody else's workplace problems into sure signs that your job is on the brink of collapse. When we let our minds wander down those back alleys into catastrophic thinking, you probably do one or both of the following: overestimating unlikely probabilities, overestimating devastating consequences. So what should we do? Well, the experts tell us that catastrophic thinking needs to be challenged by more rational, logical thinking. Here are 3 ways to seize control of your brain before your brain seizes control of you. 1, name your catastrophic thinking for what it is and the impact it makes. When your mind starts to wander down those dark what-if roads, say to yourself out loud if it helps, "I am having catastrophic thoughts, and these don't serve me at all." Or, "I am making up a terrible story, and that's all it is, a story." Or, "These thoughts make me feel horrible, and I can change them." One of my favorite phrases comes from a magnet I saw on the wall of a yoga studio. Don't believe everything you think. 2, remind yourself that even if the worst case scenario should happen, you have the resources you need to deal with it. Take a few minutes to list all of the inner resources you have available: your resilience, your determination, your sense of humor, and the external resources you have available: your family and friends, your home, your job, all of which you could lean into if and when you need them. 3, find the core of truth in your catastrophic thinking that needs real attention from you. If you're constantly worrying that you're going to be fired, ask yourself what's actually going on at work that's raising your level of anxiety and make a plan to address that. I call this the 2% true rule. Even if your concern seems really far-fetched, perhaps there's 2% of it rooted in truth that's worth checking out. Rather than invite catastrophic thinking, let's embody the words of Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav, who said, "Thinking is more precious than all 5 senses." Let's shift our precious thinking from what we fear the most to what we believe we are truly capable of in the best of times, or if the unthinkable should happen, in the worst of times. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be liked at work. According to Tim Sanders, author of The Likeability Factor: How to Boost Your L Factor and Achieve Your Life's Dreams, when your colleagues, direct reports, and bosses like you, you have a better chance of being promoted, being assigned special projects that interest you, having people go above and beyond for you, getting timely responses and feedback, and having the kind of social capital that you can draw on to get what you want and need from others. So when does wanting to be liked become a problem? When it comes at the expense of being respected. According to scientist Cameron Anderson of the Haas School of Business at the University of California, Berkeley, overall happiness in life is related to how much you are respected by those around you. Nevertheless, when we sacrifice what it takes to be respected for the quicker and often easier win of feeling liked, we lose out on the benefits that respect yields. Like what? Like greater enjoyment and satisfaction with our jobs, more focus and prioritization, an increased sense of meaning and significance, better health and well-being, more feelings of trust and safety, and increased engagement. Professionals who want and often need to feel liked tend to seek positive attention and approval, engage in gossip rather than giving direct feedback, try to please everyone, make promises they can't keep strong opinions to themselves, flood people with credit, compliments, and praise, play favorites but pretend they don't, use information as leverage, withholding or giving it away, give people tasks they enjoy rather than assignments that stretch and challenge them, focus more on how people feel in general and about them personally than about achieving outcomes. Professionals who recognize the importance of being respected, with or without being liked, are more inclined to tell the truth, even if it's unpopular, explain their thinking behind the difficult decisions they make, acknowledge the elephant in the room, even if they can't fix it, say no when they need to, be open-minded and decisive, give credit when it's due to others, and also take it when it's due themselves, tolerate feelings of disappointment, frustration, sadness, and anger in themselves and others, hold people accountable for their results, be consistent and fair in setting rules and expectations, set and honor boundaries for themselves and others, deliver negative feedback directly and in a timely manner, ask for feedback regularly and then act on it, apologize when they make mistakes and then move on, model the behavior they expect from others. For professionals who want to grow in their roles and careers, being liked is good, but being respected is a requirement. As Margaret Thatcher once remarked, if you just set out to be liked, you would be prepared to compromise on anything at any time, and you would achieve nothing. Expectations for how you want your participants to show up and contribute to the conversation. A few simple ones may include, be fully present for this meeting and don't be doing other things. Say it in the meeting, not afterwards in the break room or the parking lot. Give new voices an opportunity to be heard and don't hog the conversation. Disagree without being disagreeable. Offer a different perspective without being combative. Take risks. Speak up, even if it feels uncomfortable. And of course, if you're the one communicating these operating principles, you should also be the one modeling them too. Mahatma Gandhi once said, "Freedom is not worth having if it does not include the freedom to make mistakes." As any seasoned professional knows, making blunders, having missteps, and being just plain wrong at times is part of the journey to success. What else is a part of that occasionally bumpy path to profit? Having to endure hearing, "I told you so." Few phrases make people bristle as much as, "I told you so." First of all, when we've gotten something wrong, we certainly don't want to be reminded of it. Second of all, "I told you so" can be interpreted as a way of somebody seeking credit for their intelligence or foresight, which is fine, except when it's clearly at the expense of your project or your ego. Third, it's often an indirect or passive-aggressive way of somebody expressing hurt that you didn't listen to them in the first place, frustration that you ignored their advice, or even anger that you picked a different approach despite their warnings. Of course, There are multiple ways of responding to someone's "I told you so," including genuine gratitude. "Thank you so much for trying to warn me." Vulnerable. "You had no way of knowing this, but hearing that makes me feel hurt and embarrassed." Direct. "I don't appreciate that." Challenging. "Yeah, and?" Humorous. Said nobody who was ever really trying to be helpful." Deflecting. "I think the research shows that that phrase is a serious conversation ender." Simply. Ouch. Snarky. "Who do you think you are, my mother?" Redirecting. So, as I was saying, corrective. "May I offer you some feedback on how you might approach me next time so that I'm more likely to take your advice?" Depending on the relationship you have with the other person, you might try one of the above responses. But regardless of the relationship you have, this two-word response should work in almost any situation. You did. It's just that simple. You're acknowledging the truth of the matter, that the other person warned you about something or gave you advice. And it doesn't imply fault or personalize it or dramatize it or draw it out. It's a simple statement of fact. It's direct, non-defensive, clean, concise, and clear. Whether you decide to respond in two simple words or in some other way, how you choose to react to one of the most maddening phrases in the English language can go a long way to demonstrating your professionalism, self-possession, and poise. When we think about effective leaders, many of us picture someone who is calm, cool, and collected under stressful conditions. We envision somebody who is reliably even-keeled in the best of times and the worst of times, and who can calm others' anxiety with a placid demeanor during change and transition, and is unruffled when others are in a frenzy. But, as American author Willa Cather put it, there are some things you learn best in calm, and some in storm. Here are 5 times to temporarily put your moderate demeanor behind you and bring some modulation to your approach. 1. When you need to get the team's attention about something urgent. In today's busy work environments, everything can feel urgent. But to get your people to sit up and take notice of a client problem that really needs to be handled immediately, a sales opportunity that needs to be seized ASAP, or a public relations gaffe that has to be remedied today, you may need to get louder, speak more animatedly, and change up your delivery approach to get their attention now. 2, when there's someone or something to celebrate. Whether you're celebrating by holding a big party or a small, regular Tuesday morning meeting, smile when you speak. Generate excitement with your body language, and have a lilt in your voice so that people don't have to guess whether or not you're delighted. 3, when you're sharing the vision. If you want people to feel connected to and inspired by the vision, you need to speak about it with pride in your voice, excitement on your face, and a tone that communicates that you care and that you want your people to care also. 4, when you need to stop a behavior ASAP. When it comes to behaviors that put people and/or the company at risk, you can't communicate your feedback in a way that has someone wondering about how problematic the behavior really is. Speak in a tone that conveys the seriousness of the situation. You don't want to appear passive about the impact of the behavior, the consequences of not getting it handled, and your commitment to making sure it doesn't happen again. 5, when you're rallying the troops. Setbacks happen. Change is inevitable. Reversals of fortune occur. And when you notice the morale starting to flag, you may need to exchange your mellow demeanor for a meaningful, motivational call to action. You may need to start with an empathetic, compassionate tone that mirrors the fear and sadness of your team, and then you might transition to an uplifting inflection with animated body language to convey your hope and excitement for the future. Whatever you do, don't do nothing. Being and staying calm can be a gift until it undermines your ability to set firm boundaries, make a clear call to action, and inspire others. Use your calmness as a strategic leadership tool, which also means knowing when to put it aside. Work is hard, which is why it's called work. Every day we face challenges that range from solving difficult technical problems to generating new solutions to ongoing issues. And we're expected to do all of that while staying calm, cool, and collected. This is known as emotional labor. The expectation to consistently express positive emotions at work can feel difficult. But when negative emotions trickle out indirectly, they often lead to behaviors that may feel good in the moment as we release some pent-up negativity, but that tend to cause a shame hangover the next day. Here are some examples. 1, giving somebody the silent treatment, hoping they'll take the initiative and ask you, hey, did I do something wrong? 2, making snarky comments about somebody's appearance. 3, telling someone, I need to talk to you, and then letting them worry until the meeting. 4, speaking negatively about somebody behind his or her back. 5, playing devil's advocate just because you enjoy it. 6, taking credit for someone else's idea. 7, telling somebody why the idea she's really excited about won't work without offering helpful insights. 8, saying, I told you so. 9, sharing what you really wanted to say in the meeting after the actual meeting. 10, asking lots of people for their opinions until you get the opinion you want. Whether you see yourself as a leader already or becoming a leader is a goal for you, keep in mind that these 10 behaviors are credibility and career killers. So what do you do if you recognize one or more of these in yourself? Here are 3 strategies. 1, become emotionally fluent. When we're children, we learn to put words to feelings like, I feel happy or I feel scared. This is known as verbalization of affects. Then many of us stop learning how to do that. Furthermore, we're often discouraged from naming how we feel at work. As a result, many of us have a limited vocabulary for our emotions, ranging from happy and sad to angry and wait, what else is there? Emotional labor and its impacts can feel compounded if you don't have the words to describe what feelings you're working to express or suppress. Start naming what you feel and you'll notice an increase in your emotional fluency. 2, find a healthy emotional outlet. When you don't have a safe or appropriate place to express how you feel, your emotions are likely to come out in destructive ways, to you and to others. Find a person whom you can share openly and honestly with, without making them your punching bag or sob sister. Find an activity that allows you to release your emotions, whether it's boxing or yoga or a book club or baking. Do something that lets you express yourself directly, honestly, and regularly. 3, make a deal with your future self. Bad-mouthing your boss might feel terrific today, but it won't tomorrow. Playing devil's advocate with your colleague might feel like a victory today, but it won't tomorrow. Before you engage in any behavior that might give you instant emotional relief, think about your last shame hangover and how you'd prefer to feel tomorrow. Your future self will thank you for considering her or his emotional needs. Emotional labor is work indeed. And it's worth doing the work to make sure the behaviors that emerge from managing your emotions are ones that will boost rather than break your career. Despite the ubiquity of technological advances, for many of us, time management is more of a problem than ever. Whether you keep postponing finishing your client presentation because your boss keeps throwing new projects at you, or you can't schedule your family vacation because you have too many high priority tasks, getting a handle on getting things done can be consistently tricky. Nevertheless, as much as we feel genuinely stressed out about getting things done, Many of us also feel a spark of pride when we claim, I'm too busy. Research shows that busy people are perceived as having high status, and this is a 21st century phenomenon. Professionals who are regarded as being especially competent and very ambitious are expected to be in high demand and short supply on the job market. So when we tell others that I'm too busy, we are suggesting subtly or not so subtly that we are in demand, which enhances our perceived status. Regardless of whether we communicate our feelings of overwhelm to send a message that our work is very important and that we are too, or because we truly feel the struggle of managing competing priorities, being too busy to get things done well isn't a professional asset. It puts stress on the system around us emotionally and practically. It can also have reputational costs, especially if we're viewed by others as at risk of dropping the ball. So, what can you do to manage your time more effectively? Well, the first thing you can do is to stop asking yourself that question. Here are 3 better questions to ask to help you be as busy as you are willing to be. 1, what's my mindset about time management? Maybe you believe that time management is something to be mastered and that you can and will do it. Or perhaps your mindset is closer to, I'm not in charge of things around here, so what's the point? Or maybe your mindset sounds like John Maxwell's, time management is an oxymoron. Time is beyond our control and the clock keeps ticking regardless of how we lead our lives. Whether or not you believe that time is beyond your control, your mindset is completely within your control. You choose how you think about your time, your priorities, and your abilities. Whatever mindset you choose, know that it matters, as it will drive your behaviors and skill development around time management. Without a helpful, supportive growth mindset, you're likely to stay stuck with the same old challenges. 2, how good am I at analyzing how much time each of my tasks will take? For many of the leaders I coach, they have an accurate understanding of how long some tasks will take, like planning the agenda for their weekly team meeting, a gut sense about other tasks, such as budgeting for the next fiscal year, and no sense about other categories of tasks, for example, coming up with a new idea for a client proposal. Chances are, if you're regularly missing deadlines for a particular type of task, you should sit down and track how long those tasks take in actuality. You might think that writing a pitch deck will take you 10 hours, but if you're not tracking it, you'll likely forget that it actually takes you 30 hours because you're coordinating with 4 other team members. And if you're thinking to yourself, I don't have the time to track how I use my time on tasks, guess what? You definitely need to track your time on tasks. 3, how regularly do I allow myself to be interrupted? Research shows that people spend an average of 11 minutes on a project before they're interrupted, and it takes about 25 minutes to get back to the point they were at before a distraction, according to a UC Irvine study. The International Journal of Stress Management shows that professionals who are frequently interrupted have an increase in their levels of exhaustion and physical health problems such as migraines or back pain. Bottom line, the effects of interruptions on productivity, energy, and work satisfaction cost an estimated $588 billion a year in the United States. And chances are, it's costing you more than you know. Track how often you're interrupted at work, whether it's by your boss IMing you to ask for regular project updates, or by your colleague wanting to talk about last night's episode of This Is Us, or by yourself wanting to check in to see what snacks are left from the board meeting. 73% of interruptions typically are handled right away without any consideration for priority. If you want to get better at managing your time, you need to get better at managing other people's expectations of how quickly you'll put their interests before yours. Pericles wrote, "Time is the wisest counselor of all, and your busyness can be managed if you're wise about how you think and act about how you're using your time." In his Harvard Business Review article, The Discipline of Listening, Author and advisor Ram Charan reports that 25% of leaders' 360-degree feedback indicates a listening deficit, the effects of which can paralyze cross-unit collaboration, sink careers, and, if it's the CEO with a deficit, derail the company. And good listening isn't just a leadership competency. It's a critical skill for anyone who needs to build rapport and trust, show support, better understand and communicate expectations, reduce conflict, resolve problems with customers, colleagues, and superiors, work well in a team, and basically demonstrate that they care about anyone other than just themselves. So that's pretty much anyone who wants to get and keep a job or a relationship. So considering how critical listening is for our work and life, and how easily distracted we are from doing it well, here are 3 ways to listen so that you can decide how to listen rather than hope you're listening. 1, listen to relate. In this type of listening, you are paying attention to the other person's content and using what they're talking about as a way to relate it back to yourself. It's the kind of listening that builds rapport, like when we say, "You have a rescue dog? Me too." But done too much or too often, this kind of listening can come across as self-involved or like not listening at all. Number 2, listening to gather data. When you listen like this, you hear what the other person is saying, the words themselves. They may be sharing a process, directions, or instructions with you, and you listen closely enough that you can repeat them back to demonstrate, "I got this." This kind of listening helps you gather facts, but might also have you miss the opportunity to go deeper and learn more. 3, listen to learn. This type of listening requires your total focus on the other person. You're listening to fully understand, which means that you must attend to their verbal, vocal, and visual cues. You are with them and their thoughts, not with your own thoughts. You're curious and open rather than planning your response or your attack. Listening at this level is so rare, but it builds trust better and faster than any other kind of listening. If you're going to listen, and I hope that you do, know what you're listening for and who you're listening to. Whether we're dealing with a colleague, a client, a direct report, or the boss, when we make a promise, we usually, hopefully, have every intention of keeping it. Promises kept build personal, team, brand, and organizational trust, and cost us credibility and reliability when broken. And even though occasionally defaulting on our commitments is seen as an inevitable part of life, letting ourselves off the hook should be the exception rather than the rule. So how can we fortify the promises we make to ourselves and to others in our personal and professional lives? By cultivating the 5 qualities of a well-made promise, as highlighted by Donald Sull and Charles Spinoza in their Harvard Business Review article, Promise-Based Management, the Essence of Execution. 1, make your promises public. When we make an announcement in front of 1 or more witnesses about what we're going to do, our reputations are at stake. We cannot selectively forget our commitments because we will and should be called on it. For example, if you're making a promise to your staff member that you will honor your weekly supervision meeting time, spread the word. You'll be more likely to keep a commitment that you have made in public. 2, make your promises active. A passive promise is one where somebody has made a request and you answer, "Yeah, and you go right back to what you were doing. A passive promise is also one made when somebody is yelling at you and you agree just to keep the peace. An active promise is one where you think through what you can promise, what you can't promise, and make your commitment accordingly. 3, make your promises voluntarily. Sull and Spinoza warn us that unless you have the power and freedom to decline a request or make a counteroffer, you actually can't make a solid promise. So when asking for commitments from people at work where there's an inequality of power, make sure they truly believe that they can say no or offer other options. 4, make your promises explicit. Would you rather have your boss promise to sign off on your expense report ASAP or by this Friday at noon? You need to be unambiguously clear with yourself and others about what you'll do, by when, how it's coming, and how it turns out in order for a promise to really stick. 5, make your promises mission-based. When a supervisor promises to let a direct report work from home on Wednesdays, she's making a mission-driven decision to do what's best and what's right for the staff person, the team, and the organization. The beauty of mission-based promises is that when roadblocks arise, and they will, the promise maker can refocus on creative ways to meet the spirit of the promise, even if some of the details of the promise need to be renegotiated. I can't promise that making and asking for better promises will change your life, but it can pave the path to more trust in your personal and professional relationships. Henry Ford once said, "Coming together is a beginning, keeping together is progress, working together is success." Nevertheless, not everyone in a company defines success as working together, nor is every team member interested in coming together or keeping together. If you consider yourself a collaborative leader, you might be confused about others who don't follow suit. Some professionals are more driven by competition than cooperation, while others don't feel like there's enough trust or psychological safety to collaborate effectively. Others may feel like collaboration favors mediocre performers over superstars. And employees may be discouraged by the challenges associated with collaborating across global teams, where others weigh the amount of time collaboration can take compared to going it alone and choose the speedier route. For many people, collaboration can feel like just one more thing on their growing to-do list. And yet, if you're the collaborative colleague or manager who's working with a non-collaborative person, you need to understand what's getting in the way and how to speak up before it impacts both business outcomes and workplace relationships. Here are 4 considerations for addressing non-collaborative colleagues. 1, define what you mean by collaboration. Collaboration is actually an interpretation of behaviors, and different people will interpret collaborative behaviors differently from one another. You might think of collaboration as sharing all information as soon as it is obtained, while your colleague thinks of collaboration as sharing information as needed to move the project along. Engage your colleague in a conversation about that. Say, "I'd like to discuss our collaboration, and I realize that what I think collaboration is and what you think it is might differ. Would you share how you think about collaboration?" 2, name what you notice without blaming or shaming. Approach your colleague using morally neutral language, I statements, and a forward-looking suggestion. Think about the difference in potential impact between telling your colleague, "In our meetings, you never ask me for my opinions," and "In our meetings, I would like more opportunities to contribute my opinions to the discussion. I think that my input could move our initiative forward. How can we make that happen?" 3, make a specific request. Ask for 1 or 2 concrete behavior changes from your colleague, not a laundry list. You might request that your colleague shares a particular resource with you to reduce costs, or invites a representative from your department to participate in her team meetings to increase knowledge sharing, and that's it for now. 4, give and invite feedback. Once you notice your colleague or direct report engaging in a behavior that you see as collaborative, give immediate positive feedback to help lock it in. If you see a missed opportunity, address it immediately as well. And in order to be truly collaborative, actively seek feedback too. You need to be brave enough to ask, "How might I be contributing to this problem?" and then model how to receive the feedback. To be a truly collaborative leader and colleague, you need to be willing to get clear on what collaboration means for you and others, address non-collaborative behaviors when you see them, and offer feedback when you see somebody making the positive changes you've requested to create a much more collaborative environment. When you think about your annual physical exam, you may be worried that your doctor is going to criticize your choices, like eating too much steak and not enough salad, deliver disappointing news, or find something frightening. Those are the kinds of concerns that prevent people from reaching out to their doctor for help. But feeling judged, disheartened, or fearful isn't just for patients. It may be how your colleagues, clients, or direct reports feel if you're not thoughtful and careful about the words you choose. Here are 3 phrase substitutions you can make to motivate others and no medical license necessary. 1, don't say lazy, say busy. Lazy implies that somebody is unwilling to do the work or make the effort. And while you might have a colleague, client, or direct report whom you think isn't willing to sweat, literally or figuratively, calling him lazy is not likely to inspire him to roll up his sleeves and become more proactive. In fact, using the word lazy tends to make others feel judged and criticized. And do you know what judged and criticized people don't do? They don't start working harder. Instead, acknowledge that your colleague is busy and empathize with the fact that he may be trying to manage multiple competing priorities. Then see how you can support him in removing some of the roadblocks, or reprioritizing his workload, or even getting curious about when he thinks he can commit to tackling this task. 2, don't say ruin, say wake-up call. While telling your colleague that her lack of proofreading is ruining the report and your trust in her might shame her into compliance, it's not likely to give her a sense of control over the future. When you see a small problem, address it immediately as a wake-up call for your colleague to get it handled before it escalates into something bigger and with potentially permanent ramifications. 3, don't say can't, say opportunity to. Your direct report wants to take on a new challenging project and wants to own it. You don't think he has the knowledge or skill level to have that level of autonomy that he thinks he's ready for. You could tell him, I can't let you run with it, which may undermine his enthusiasm. You could tell him, you can't do this on your own yet, which may sap his confidence. Or you could tell him, let's use this project as a learning opportunity. We'll partner together on it this time with the goal of you being able to take it on yourself next time. You don't have to be a doctor to work on your bedside manner. With a few tweaks to your language, you can engage, motivate, and inspire others to make challenging changes less daunting. Supervision meetings are often held with unclear expectations, minimal planning, and even less enthusiasm. Sound familiar? If you'd like to transform these conversations from boring and unproductive into meetings that really matter and make a positive difference, here are 3 things to stop doing. 1, stop delivering a monologue. Of course, you have updates to give and tasks to delegate and feedback to offer. But if you're the only one talking, you're missing a critical opportunity to learn something. Like what? Like what's keeping your colleague up at night, what they're excited about, what they want more of or less of, and much, much more. One of the best ways to make sure that your conversations are indeed a two-way street is to let your direct report know in advance that you expect them to contribute to the agenda. The next best way to make sure that you're having a dialogue rather than a monologue is to really listen rather than planning your response while your colleague is talking. 2, stop gossiping or complaining about other people. Gossip? I don't gossip, you might be thinking to yourself. Hold that thought and consider how the authors of Passing the Word Toward a Model of Gossip and Power in the Workplace, Nancy Kurland and Lisa Hope Peled, define gossip. Informal and evaluative talk in an organization, usually among no more than a few individuals, about another member of that organization who is not present. In other words, if you're using the time in your one-on-one meeting to complain that your boss is too busy to approve your budget, but not too busy to take 2-hour lunches, you're gossiping. Likewise, if your direct report brings an outside person into the conversation to complain about, and you join in on the bashing, you're gossiping. You may think of this as a bonding experience, but it won't be too long before the bonds of trust between you and your direct report start to fray as she wonders to herself, is my boss also talking about me? 3, rushing or canceling. It might seem like your one-on-one supervision meetings are a nice to have rather than a need to have. It might seem like these conversations are important but not urgent. It might seem like taking care of your external stakeholders is more critical than attending to your internal stakeholders. Yes, it might seem that way, but those mindsets more often than not are a mistake. Research shows that when managers commit to having regular and frequent development conversations with their staff, employees are more motivated and engaged. Rushing through, frequently postponing, or just canceling these meetings gets noticed, and not in a good way. Commit to making these internal conversations as high a priority as any client-facing engagement. One-on-one meetings can be an opportunity to show how invested you are in the growth, learning, and engagement of your employees. Maximize your impact by not minimizing these conversations. Whether you're hosting a conference, mingling in a networking event, or leading your team through a presentation to a new client, there's one step that's inevitable: introducing people to one another. If you're like most busy professionals, your introductions of your colleagues and clients feel perfunctory or unplanned and either come across as terse or rambling. They deserve better than that, and so do you. As Plato wrote in the Republic, the beginning is the most important part of the work. Introducing people to each other is the beginning of establishing credibility for them and for you, building rapport, creating connections, starting or strengthening relationships, making quality referrals, setting the stage for future business collaborations, and so much more. In addition, when you demonstrate that you care about your colleagues and clients enough to learn and share some memorable items about them, more memorable than just what's on their business card or on their LinkedIn profile, you make yourself more memorable too. Consider this typical introduction that you might make at a networking event. Dan, this is my colleague Karen. She's a lawyer. Is it satisfactory? Sure. Is it accurate? Let's hope so. Is it flattering, intriguing, engaging? Not one bit. What would be better? Dan, this is my colleague Karen. While she's a lawyer by day, at night she plays a mean alto sax with a jazz band at a club downtown. If you want to distinguish yourself from your competitors, polish your presence, wow people with your networking skills, build solid personal and professional relationships, or be invited to attend or even speak at more events that feel critical to your business growth, try these 3 strategies for making more memorable, flattering introductions. 1, story. Replace "this is Doug and he's an accountant" with a story about how you met Doug, or when Doug helped you out of a jam, or when Doug impressed you personally or professionally. For example, "This is Doug. I learned that he was a brilliant accountant the hard way when I got a terrifying letter from the IRS about back taxes that I knew I had paid, but I didn't know what to do next. That's when my wife told me about her coworker Doug, who knew just what to do and, as you can see, has kept me out of jail ever since." An important note: make sure the story you tell about the other person makes them look good, always. Surprise. Replace "this is Nancy and she owns a floral shop" with something about Nancy that surprised you or would be surprising to others. Consider this. "This is Nancy. She owns a floral shop in the financial district that does everything from personal bouquets to weddings. And despite the fact that she loves her job, it turns out that she's allergic to about 10 different flowers." I mean, can you imagine being literally allergic to your job? Remember that a surprise shouldn't surprise the person you're introducing. You don't want to reveal something embarrassing or too personal. Number 3, shared. Replace "this is Mark and he runs a chain of computer repair stores" with something that you and Mark discovered you have in common outside of work. Try "this is Mark. When he told me that he ran a computer repair store, I confessed that I still have my 1982 Commodore 64 computer in my basement, and that's when Mark laughed and admitted to me that he had his still too." Introducing people doesn't have to be hard, but it doesn't have to be boring either. Leading business schools teach storytelling as a communication strategy. The ability to tell an engaging, compelling, and persuasive story is a hallmark of effective leadership and of executive presence. Stories are a powerful way for leaders at all levels to engage customers, increase sales, rally the troops, sell ideas internally and externally, recruit talented staff, and share the key messages about you and your company that you want both your internal and external stakeholders to hear. A good story isn't just entertaining, it's scientifically proven to be more effective in helping people remember critical information. According to marketing professor Jennifer Aker at Stanford's Graduate School of Business, stories are remembered up to 22 times more than facts alone. In other words, if you have a message that you want people to remember, wrap it in a story. Professionals can invigorate the impression they make, increase the impact they have, and intensify their influence on others by mastering the art and science of telling the right story at the right time. Here are 20 personal and professional experiences you can draw from to get you started on your storytelling journey. 1, a conversation that changed my life. 2, how I got to be where I am now or who I am now. 3, how our company was founded. 4, what we stand for as a team or a company and what we won't stand for either. 5, the best or worst team I've ever been a part of. 6, the biggest lesson I've learned about myself, maybe the hard way. 7, where I've struggled or a challenge I overcame. 8, how I came to understand my core values. 9, a time when I lost confidence in myself. 10, who we are here to serve and why. 11, how the competition is nipping at our heels. 12, what I learned from a jerk in my life and what I have to thank him or her for. 13, a skeptical customer we won over. 14, a team that wrestled and then succeeded. 15, a hard but necessary change that I or we made. 16, our very best work and how we made that happen. 17, our biggest misstep and how we recovered. 18, what I or we are most proud of. 19, who I can always count on and why. 20, something that never should have worked, but did. And after you tell your story, invite your colleagues and clients to tell you theirs too. You may be thinking, office gossips? They're the lowest of the low. I try to steer clear of such nonsense. What you may not realize is that you're gossiping too. Authors Nancy Kurland and Lisa Hope Peled, in their research paper, Passing the Word Toward a Model of Gossip and Power in the Workplace, define gossip as informal and evaluative talk in an organization, usually among no more than a few individuals about another member of that organization who is not present. When you think about how often your workplace conversations are 1, informal, I'm just hanging out in Linda's office, 2, evaluative, discussing how difficult it is to get a timely response from Doug in accounting, 3, among no more than a few individuals, oh, and Marcy's here too, and 4, about another member of that organization who is not present, Doug's at his desk, of course, doing who knows what, you might start to realize how often you're engaging in gossip and contributing to gossip's damaging effects. Like what? Like the erosion of trust, hurt feelings, decreased morale, damaged reputations, reduced personal and professional credibility, increased anxiety, divisiveness, and attrition. If that sounds like a list you'd rather avoid, here are 3 strategies to stop workplace gossip in its tracks. 1, name it, then pivot. First, call gossip gossip to stop it in its tracks. If you are engaging in informal and evaluative talk in an organization, usually among no more than a few individuals about another member of that organization who is not present, especially if the aim is to confirm your experience rather than get constructive solutions, then you are participating in gossip. If you call someone on it, most people will step back at hearing a colleague say, this sounds like gossip. Is that what you intended? Second, pivot the conversation by asking, how can I help you get a better outcome? Only engage in coaching, brainstorming, and problem-solving conversations, not in problem-confirming ones. 2, ask yourself or others why you need somebody else's confirmation about a behavior that you're noticing in a third person. If it's to justify your feelings or confirm that you're right or gain support for your point of view, don't bring somebody else into the conversation. If it's to understand how you might be contributing to the dynamic or problem, to brainstorm helpful solutions, or to go on the record to make a formal complaint for further investigation, then go for it. 3, let people know that you have a policy of, if you have a problem with me, please tell me first. Adopt the tell them first policy with your colleagues, and when somebody approaches you with gossip about somebody else, ask, have you already told her? To remind them of this policy. Gossip, even by any other name, is still a destructive communication strategy that negatively impacts individuals, teams, and the whole organization. By stopping it in its tracks, choosing healthier and more helpful methods of communicating what's not working, and engaging in collaborative problem solving, relationships and organizations can flourish.